summary of the information, where it includes, all your basic data, bibliographic information. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see buy, borrow, and browse. Buy is, of course, links to services to actually purchase the book, including Amazon and every other online store that they could easily integrate with. Borrow integrates with local library services or other kind of lending systems to try and get your hands on the book. And browse is when they actually have the content available for the book. So that if they've scanned it, you would see a link under here for reading the content online in the online book reader. And you can see, of course, that there's kind of an invitation to add additional information. No one's put a table of contents on here. People haven't fully fleshed out this record yet. Now, getting back to the original reason I came into this project, creating a registry of public domain content, that gets into this other related project in Canada called pdregistry.ca, which integrates with Open Library and provides a system for organizing the copyright status of the information as the primary focus. Because the Open Library project is primarily focused on scanning these books, providing great searching in these books, and bibliographic data on these books, but they're not putting so much effort into understanding the copyright status of a book and licensing status of a book. So that's where pdregistry.ca comes in, and this is where more of my work is visible. So when you pull up a book on there, you'll notice a little line under there, and these are all beta templates. None of this pdregistry.ca hasn't launched yet. But you'll see on the bottom, this book is in copyright in Canada until 2166. Yes, part of the purpose of this project is to have people realize the absurd lengths of time that copyright is granted to works.
Thank Orrin Hess for that.
So what we did is we built a system to take as much data as we could about a work and try and calculate the actual copyright expiration when it enters the public domain. And this is for two purposes. One is, like I said, this kind of pedagogical goal of kind of educating people about what kind of copyright we're granting to modern published works, and as well as being able to provide a service for people being able to find what's coming into the public domain. Because every year new things are entering the public domain that we can share and build off of and use, and no one is really tracking what's entering the public domain in a given year. So this provides a service, at least for Canada, to try and put a year on all these books so we can have something on the front page that says, now that it's 2009, these books have entered the public domain, we think. The problem about all these things is we always have to preface it with we think, because a large body of copyright law hasn't really been tested in courts. So what we do is we have to work off a lot of assumptions that are built off other assumptions. So we have assumptions about the actual source data we're using. We have assumptions about the actual about the laws that come into play with that source data. And then based on all those things, we try and come up with a fairly conservative estimate of when something enters the public domain.
It's great that you're making all that stuff explicit though here, as far as how you're actually
putting
it together.
Almost every single rule in the system sticks a claim on here about what it's doing in its analysis. It will stick a claim in here about any source data it has, or any liberties it's taking with the source data, so that you know that it's not taking some kind of leap of faith you wouldn't want to take. Like one of the things that's most complicated is dealing with authorship information, because the copyright law in the US and Canada is based on authors, not based on, well, it does have things based on publication date, but the publication date really only comes into play if the author is unknown or it's published posthumously. Yeah. So we tend to have to rely on author information about birth and death, but that gets complicated because the data is really incomplete. On a lot of books, we'll have the publication date, and then we may have a birth date for the author or a death date for the author, and we have to kind of create assumptions around these and try and work with them as much as possible. So they have interesting things in Canada with it, like you'll notice for this particular work, we have the year of publication is listed as 1999. We have the list of authors. We have to assume the list of authors is complete because there's no way for the system to truly know that the list of authors for a work is complete because there's no canonical database that says this book has 3 authors. And then we know if we have 3, we have them all. So we always have to, that assumption is always going to be on the list. The other things that are assumptions on here are called assumptions because someone could theoretically enter bad data, or the source database we have could be bad. And that's the other reason we put these up here, so you know you can kind of do a reasonableness check in your head. Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, died in 1910. That's reasonable. And then we said, for this John George author, we don't have any birth or death date information, so what we do is we assume that they were born at the time of publication, which is the most conservative measure we can have because you can't author a book before you're born. So if we assume he was born on the birth date, on the publication date of the book, and that we assume, because we don't have a death date, that he lives to be the oldest Canadian ever. So we assume he authored the book as he was peeking into the world, and that he lives to be the oldest person in Canada. Then this book is only going to be entering public domain in 2166. The problem is that we have to make all these assumptions, and it really tends to result in overly conservative measures of entering the public domain. But we can't go out on a limb and do more liberal measures of entering the public